All right, my friends, we are live. I want to welcome you all to another Dividend Happy Hour, a Saturday special, I guess we'll call it. But tonight we are joined by the magnificent, the extraordinary, the maestro of moolah. We've got Kevin Burgess in the building. Kevin, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing real well. Thanks, Ryan. I'm super stoked to be here. I'm really excited to be on screen with my buddy Ryan. I've known you for probably a year and a half, and I think this is the first time we've ever talked live. So looking forward
Yeah,
to it. It's
this
going to
is
be a fun
certainly
time.
Yeah, absolutely. This is certainly long overdue, but man, thank you so much for making the time to do this with me. I know there's going to be so many good nuggets in this video. I think the audience is really going to enjoy it, and we've got a lot of fun things to talk about. But before we get into that, you guys know how we do. We've got to kick it off with a quick cheers for the Dividend Happy Hour. So, Kevin, here's to you, my friend. And we also have to toast to the yield, to the growth, and to that sweet cash flow. So, cheers, everyone. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Mm-mm-mm. Kevin, what are you sipping on? I know you brought something special tonight to the live stream.
Yeah, I'm sipping tonight on something that I can't really pronounce very well, but I think it's called Leinenkugel, and it's called the Summer Shanty or Shandy, not Shanty. And it's something that I drink with my buddy when we're here at the beach. And tonight we're here at the beach.
Nice, man. I'm just sipping on a little flavored water. I had maybe one too many margaritas these last couple of days, so I'm kind of cooling it. But Kevin, one of the things I really appreciate about you, and one of the reasons I really enjoy watching your videos, is you are one of the few people in this space who I know of that is actually retired and is actually living off of passive income. You know, many of us watching and many of us here, including myself, are still working up to that stage, but you are actually there. And I think not only is that proof of concept of what we're all doing here, just trying to build our portfolios brick by brick, but I mean, it's at least for me, it's extremely inspiring and it's extremely motivating to see that at some point that hard work can pay off. And it's really cool that you show your portfolio and show us what a portfolio can grow into after doing this for such a long period of time. So having said all that, I just want to thank you for doing what you do. And I can't speak for everyone, but I know for me, it makes a difference and it really keeps me going. So thank you.
My pleasure, man. I enjoy it. And, I do like being kind of transparent as well. I think that's helpful. I'm not here to try to shape anybody's portfolio. I'm just here to show you what I'm doing with mine. And if it helps, that's great. And if it doesn't, then you'll know what not to do. So either way, it
Yeah.
works, right?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, too, the biggest holdup, I think, or one of the biggest frustrations, I don't even know if frustrations is the right word, but one of the reasons people stay out of this style of investing is because it does take so long. But
Mm.
I mean, you show us that it's worth it. At the end of the road, that it really does work, and it can really be a good thing if you stick with it.
Yeah, and that's exactly the right way to think about it. It is about consistency. It's about sticking with it because, I think one thing that you and I have talked about a few times is that our growth curve in dividend growth investing is not a straight line. It is more of a curve, right? And so you'll see much more growth, much more benefit toward the end of that curve than you will early on. So don't get discouraged. Be consistent and keep driving those investments in those dividend stocks.
Yeah. And so, kind of on that note, I mean, I know dividends aren't your only thing. When
Right.
you say you're retired, you don't say I'm living off of dividend income. You say it's passive income. So,
Right.
what do those streams look like for you in addition to into the dividends you have coming in?
Yeah, so I consider that I have three streams of passive income. One of those is a pension that I was able to get when I was 55. The other two pieces are rental income. I have beach property here in South Carolina. We used to have other rental properties. We sold all of those, packaged them together in a 1031 exchange, which is really basically a tax-free exchange, and bought this beachfront property. And so that cash flows actually very well, especially in the summer. And
Mm.
so that's part of it. And then my dividends I consider to be the things that we will do things with, like vacations and the exciting things that we do. So That's kind of the way I
So the
think about it. I
dividends
had
are.
those three.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, so I just have those three streams of passive income, and I can use one or the other or all three at any given point in time. So it's I have the flexibility to do that. So then that's really cool with passive income.
Yeah. But and so it sounds like you try not to touch your dividend income. It's just kind of fun money, and if you're not going on vacation or have some special use for it, you just kind of you still reinvest those.
Exactly. So that's exactly the way I look at it because I really enjoy dividend growth investing. And so my dividends, if I don't spend them, then they give me an opportunity to reinvest it in other companies and do some of the things that I love. Plus, I mean, one of the fallacies that I think people get when they're thinking about retirement is that you get to the point of retirement and then you are really just living off of high interest or high yielding dividend stocks, and that's just not the way it works. I'm hoping to have a long and fruitful life, and so I need investments that are going to continue to grow and continue to provide more income in the future because we've seen a lot of inflation lately, and so that inflation will come and it will go, and so we just need investments that are going to grow over time to provide income for us when we need it. So that's kind of the way I
Yeah.
look at it. I look at the dividends as the growth part of my income.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because one of the common things that we hear people say is as you get closer to retirement, you might want to transition into more higher yielding cash flowing companies or ETFs or whatever, but you kind of just you say still stick to the growth stuff, huh?
Yeah, I think at least for me, I think when you're younger, and I actually did a video on this about a year ago. When you're younger, I think you want to tend toward the growth dividends, the ones with the lower yield, higher dividend growth. But when you get older, like I am, then you can kind of move that balance a little bit. But not to get rid of all of them, right? You want to continue to have some money going into higher growth uh, dividend stocks. So
Mm.
I see it more like a continuum than growth or income, right? So I see having some growth and some income throughout my career, throughout my life. But as I get older, I kind of shift more of that toward the income. Just the way
Okay.
I do it.
That makes sense. And I know in your portfolio or portfolios, you keep a pretty solid balance between growth and yield, which I want to dive a little bit deeper into momentarily. But before we get into your portfolio, what's it like to actually live off of passive income? Is it I mean, has it lived up to the expectations? Because we all think it's probably the best thing in the world. We daydream about it, but is it as sweet as they say it is?
I can tell you it is as sweet as you think about it because, I mean, what was it? Warren Buffett said something like this. I'm paraphrasing, but he said something like, if you don't learn to make money when you're sleeping, then you will work until you die. So,
Mm.
these dividends and this rental property and stuff, this money just hits my bank account. So when a company pays a dividend, boom, there it is, right? And when rent gets paid, boom, there it is. And I'm sitting here doing what I love to do. And the other fallacy is that when you retire, you stop and don't do anything. I had an uncle who actually, and I'll talk about him later, but I had an uncle who was very influential on me and my path to retirement. And he also retired at 55. And they asked him at his retirement party. They said, and his name was Bubba. That was his nickname. I
Mm.
called him Uncle Bubba. So Uncle Bubba was asked at his retirement party. They said, "Bubba, what are you going to do in retirement?" He said, "Well, my first year, I'm going to sit on my porch in a rocking chair." And they said, "Well, that's great. What are you going to do the second year?" He said, "The second year, I might start rocking." So it was kind of a cool way to say, "Hey, that's what he didn't do that. He loved hunting and stuff like that. So he did what he loved, and he passed away in 2009. So he's been gone for quite a while, but he had a big influence on my life. So just thought I'd share that
Yeah.
story. I thought it was really funny.
No, that's cool. It seems like some people thrive in retirement and really look forward to being able to do those things that they didn't have as much time for when they were working so much, which isn't bad. It's just life. But and my parents are getting somewhat close to retirement, and I've heard them say some things about just not being sure how they're going to fill that time. And I think for some people, it can be, from what it seems like, it's kind of a scary thought to not to have so much time. Interestingly enough, to have so much time to spend and not know how to spend it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's something I look forward to, and I think, like you said, it seems to really help to have hobbies, and it's cool. It's cool that you've sucked your teeth into your YouTube channel too, because that's, I mean, I know that's a huge, that can take up a lot of time, but it's a really positive and it's a really rewarding thing to get into.
Well, that's awesome. And you know, I have you to thank for that, right? Because I started watching YouTube and Dividend channels, and yours was one of the first ones that I came across. And so I watched you, and I was like, you know, that is really cool. I wonder if I could do something like that. And then I mentioned it to you, and you were like, dude, do it, you know?
Yeah.
And I had a boss, actually the last boss I had in my career was a great guy. And one of his sayings was, anything worth doing well is worth doing poorly the first time. So basically what he was saying
Hmm.
is, don't worry about perfection, just get started, because if you get started, you can grow it and continuously improve it over time. So,
Yeah.
you know, with your encouragement and his voice kind of ringing in my head, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to make a video and post it and see what happens. So then the rest is
No,
history.
I'm so glad you did, and it's true. I look at this as, if I can do it, really anyone can do it, and I'm so glad that people like you think I could probably, if he's doing it, I could probably do it too, because
Mm,
I really haven't been investing that long. I've only been doing it for about 3 years now, and so I've learned a lot along the way. I still have a lot to learn, but there's people out there who know so much more and have so much experience doing this that I do, that I just think it's really a benefit to everyone if those people, you know, in their retirement, in their free time, take this
mm.
up, because it's such a, I don't know, it just helps so many people. Um, yeah, it's just a really cool thing. But kind of on that note, you kind of talked about your job. You have I mean, your background, your career was in a lot of this stuff. You did something with that had to do with SEC filings, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so in part of my career, I was the assistant controller of a Fortune 200 company, and so in that role, my responsibility was to make sure that the SEC documents were prepared and reviewed and actually filed with the SEC. So it fell under my realm to not only, you know, have them prepared, but also to read them and review them and make sure that everything that was put in there was I would say reasonable, right? It didn't have to be everything, but it needed to be reasonable. And so yeah, that was part of my career, was actually building these documents. And that was probably the most challenging time in my career, because I really don't like to read a lot. And as you know, there's a lot of reading that goes into those 10Ks and 10Qs. So yeah, that was part of my career. And then the next step for me was going in and leading the risk group as well as internal audit. So I spent years building financial statements and building the SEC reporting, and then I spent years auditing all of that. So you know, I was the one who had to sign off every quarter that the documents we were filing with the SEC and the earnings that we were reporting were actually real. And so it was a lot of responsibility to say, you know, my name goes on that line, before the CEO and CFO did that through the documents themselves. They looked to me and
Right.
said, "Hey, can I sign this?" Right. So,
Mm.
yeah.
Wow. I mean, having said that, all this stuff then is pretty much second nature to you at this point.
Yeah, I know my way around a 10K and a 10Q, and I never thought, you know, years ago, I never thought that I would, you know where the strategy part of the 10K is, and or even what sections would be in it. But I do, and so it is a bit of second nature. But you know, every company is a little bit different, so it's not like it's this boilerplate thing. And so, you know, you mentioned learning earlier, and regardless of how much experience and stuff that you get, you're always learning something. And I tell you, that's really what excites me. And that's what I like about this YouTube channel is I'm always learning something. And so, you know, even in retirement, if you think you're going to sit in retirement and you know everything and you're not going to learn anything, you're going to be extremely bored. So learning is key, no matter what stage
Yep.
of life you're in.
No, absolutely. What
Yeah.
what got you into investing in the first place? Were you doing it before your career started, or was that something you got into once you started working in all this stuff?
Yeah, I got into it once I started working. Just a little bit of my background. I grew up in the what we called in Arkansas, we called it the country because it wasn't in the
Mm,
city, right? So I grew up out in the country. We had very little. We lived paycheck to paycheck, and I remember my dad losing. Well, he didn't lose his job. He got laid off for a period of 4 months. You know, it was a lot of struggle. It was difficult to feed a family of five when there's no income coming in. And I remember somebody bringing a ham to our house, and I hadn't had meat really in quite a while, and that ham smelled so delicious. And my mom cut some of that off and made a ham sandwich for me. And I ate that ham sandwich, and it was a lot. It was a pivotal moment for me because what I thought at that moment was at some point I'm going to make enough money that I can have a ham sandwich whenever I want. And I know that sounds a bit trivial and trite, but it was really a moment where I resolved that I was not going to sit back and live paycheck to paycheck like my entire family did, but I was going to do something different. And I didn't know what that was, but I knew I was going to do something different, and I was going to work hard and get to that. So that was a pivotal point in my life.
yeah, it's pretty crazy how sometimes the most trivial things or the smallest, well, seemingly trivial things
Hmm.
can completely change your perspective on life and just completely put you on a different path. Life is
Yeah.
crazy. It if you would have told me if you would have told me 5 years ago that I'd be doing what I'm doing today, talking about what I'm talking about, I probably would have thought you were on drugs. I just never never saw this in my future, but and I don't even know exactly what got me into wanting to take investing seriously. It happened when I was about 26. This was
Mhm.
somewhere in the midst of the pandemic. I think it was about maybe actually towards the start of it, maybe a few months before actually, but something maybe just not being too happy with my job and thinking I need to do something outside of this that will bring in some income. Maybe it was something like that, but something kind of clicked in my brain that made me say I need to figure out some way to do that, do something different that's going to make it so no matter what happens in life, there's at least something on the side coming in. And obviously, it starts off small. I mean, the $200 I'm making, or 150, 200 I'm making every month now is not gonna, pay all the bills, but it's a start for sure. But anyway, having said all this, it's interesting that these little things can completely change the trajectory of your life.
Exactly. And I don't think I answered your question, and that's when did I start investing? And I think if my memory's right, I set up my first brokerage account around 1998 or 1999. So I guess
Mm.
that would mean 24, 25 years ago. And I tell you, over that period of time, I made some big mistakes, right? but I learned from them. And what's cool about dividend growth investing is you don't, you make mistakes, but you learn from them. And so when your portfolio gets bigger, you've learned when it was smaller what mistakes you have made. So it
Mm-hmm.
really helps you in the long run if you can start early and start and be consistent. Then you're gonna don't be afraid to make mistakes because that's really how you learn the most is through mistakes.
It's, yeah, I can certainly attest to that. Do you remember what some of the earliest stocks you bought were? I mean, were you into dividend investing from the start, or was your strategy different than it is? I'm sure it's different than it is now, but I
Yeah,
guess what
it's
were some of the
completely
earliest things you
different.
bought?
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to remember because it was actually I think it was a Scott Trade account. I don't know if you guys remember Scott Trade, but
Yeah,
it was a
I've heard
Scott
of it.
Trade account, and I bought things like I didn't buy this, but there were people at my job who were like, "Oh, you have to buy Enron." This was back when Enron really began to happen, right? And the Enron stock was plummeting, and they were like, "Oh man, it's pennies on the dollar. You have to buy that." And I was like, "I don't understand why it's pennies on the dollar and why it went down so much." So I'm going to stay away from it. Well, lo and behold, Enron collapsed, and it actually changed the course of investments moving forward. So fortunately, I was able to stay away from that one. I don't remember what some of the first ones were, but I was not on the same track then. I was just looking for companies that really looked cool to me.
Hmm.
I had a bit of a hope strategy at that point, which was I bought it and I hoped that it went up, right?
Yeah.
And that changed, right, as I grew in my career and grew in my understanding of business, and I've grown that to be one of a hope strategy to actually being a strategy where I try to understand the business and think of myself as buying a business as opposed to buying a stock. Because if I buy the
Hmm.
stock, then I'm hoping it goes up. If I'm buying the business, I hope the business does well, and I need to understand how they're going to perform. So.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people who are either new to the market or are sitting on the sidelines have thought about it but haven't jumped in yet. They don't quite get that realization that a stock is representative of an actual business, and so a lot of people think of it in terms of just buying these things that go up or down. Um, and I don't know. I think it's especially for those who don't invest in stocks, they get scared to because they don't quite grasp that it is a business. And I think it really helps to think of it that way. If you're looking at something like a Coca-Cola, it helps to think of it as a living, breathing thing. And something like that, it can kind of take the edge off because you can then look at it and say, okay, Coca-Cola has been around for a long time. It's pretty safe to say that something like that is going to be around for the future. But kind of switching gears, I mean, do you what was it about dividend investing specifically? I guess when did you find out about dividend investing, or when did that enter your headspace? And I mean, what made you want to start going down that path whenever you did find it?
Yeah, so one of the jobs that I had in my career, and it was actually the last 3 or 4 years of my career, which would have been starting maybe around 2016, maybe somewhere along in there. I was chairman of the investment committee at where I worked, and there was it was pension funds, nuclear decommissioning trusts, and the portfolio that we were responsible for was about $14 billion. And so there was, as you can imagine, a ton of different strategies that we had. We had, alternative strategies. We had hedge funds. We had fixed income. We had stocks. So there's just a myriad of things. And just to be clear, I didn't pick, nor did my team pick the investments, but we did pick the managers who manage those investments. And in order to understand whether it was going well, we needed to understand investing at that scale. And so I think it was really there where seeing all of the different types of investments that we can make and thinking about my own retirement, I really gravitated toward dividend growth investing for a couple of reasons. Yeah. I can only think of a couple right now, but one of those is that it is really hard to fake dividends. I mean, you can fake earnings, right? You can, in having a financial background, you can change the useful life of your assets and actually change the earnings of your company, right? So you didn't really do anything in the business; you just made an accounting move that changed the earnings. So there are things, and that's just an example, but there are things like that can be done on the earnings side of the business. However, on the cash side of the business, if it's not in the bank account, you didn't earn it. And so when I think about dividend growth investing, they can't pay dividends if they don't have the cash flow to do it, at least not for long. And so I find that being a dividend growth investor gives me a bit of comfort that the businesses that I'm investing in are solid and strong and are providing a service to their customers that's meaningful and adds value, because people aren't going to pay for things that aren't adding value to their lives. So that was one thing, and then also, and maybe this resonates with people watching tonight, is that there's a certain amount of emotion that goes into investing, and I guess when you look at I don't know what, 2014 to like 2020, right before COVID, I mean, the market just went straight up, right? I mean, it had a little jagged tooth to it, but you bought the dip, right? Because you knew that that dip wasn't going to last long. It was just continually going up. And then all of a sudden we hit this spot where it's not that way anymore and it's going down, and you don't really necessarily buy the dip because you don't know if it might dip further in the future. And so there's a bit of emotion in that because you don't want to pick it and then it go down. You want your stocks to grow, right? But when I'm a dividend growth investor, I get comfort in the dividend. I get comfort in what that company is paying me and that it's growing over time. And then I get less emotional about the movement of the stock price. So to me, I mean, those are two big things for me that drove me toward dividend growth investing for my personal portfolio in retirement. So hopefully that's
Mhm.
helpful. I don't know if it is, but
Yeah,
hopefully it is.
it absolutely is, and I second that. A third one that I really enjoy about dividend investing is the idea of not having to sell any shares. Well, hopefully, not have to sell any shares down the road and be able to hold on to that wealth and not only keep it to live off of, but pass it down to those that come after me. I think it could be just a really life changing thing on a multi generational level, and that excites me.
Absolutely.
It's super slow, and that's the drawback. A lot of people don't like it for that, but if you have the discipline to be consistent and have the patience, yeah, it could just be a really life changing thing. So it's fun to
Mm.
think about. But kind of moving on, I mean, what does your portfolio look like these days? I know you have a few different ones. I think at this point you've got three portfolios.
Yeah, four, I think.
Four?
Yeah, I have four, and I'm always tweaking, right? But I currently have four, and I have a dividend growth portfolio, which I really look for stocks that have a higher dividend growth and most likely a lower dividend yield because, as I said earlier, I want my net worth to grow right over time, and because expenses are going to go up, so I'm going to need more in the future to have the same lifestyle that I have today. So I need some growth. So I have a dividend growth portfolio. I also have it's a Roth IRA. And so I have really converted that. I was doing some options with that at one point. And, to be honest with you, their options are cool. So there's a lot of people doing it and they're sexy, right? But it
Yeah.
takes a lot of time. And I'm in retirement and I wasn't really enjoying it. And so if I'm not enjoying it, why do it? Right. So I have
Yeah.
converted that Roth IRA from an options portfolio to my BDC and REIT portfolio.
Mm.
So those as most of you will know, those are taxed at a normal tax rate. So with it being in an IRA, I get to avoid some of the larger taxable piece of my portfolio. And then, so that's that. And then I have an income portfolio. My income portfolio is after tax money, and it is money that I can use today. I can draw the dividends out. I don't have to worry about penalties or anything like that. And then the fourth one is an account that I started about a year or so ago that I called the Dividend Snowball account. And the idea is I wanted to show what it looked like for someone starting small, right, and then growing their portfolio over time. um, I've found that that's a bit confusing for people, and what they really want to know is not what could be for them, but what am I doing? I mean, this is my
Mm.
portfolio, this is my channel. What are you doing, Kevin? And so I think I'm going to liquidate that and move those funds into the dividend income account and kind of simplify things a little bit, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
those are the portfolios that I currently have.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. I remember you saying in one of your recent videos that you were thinking about closing down that snowball account. It always
Hmm.
feels good to consolidate too, but and I think you're exactly right. And I can certainly speak to this just from being a fan of your channel. we like to see what Kevin's up to. Kevin, the SEC filing maestro of moolah. We like to see what you're doing because we learn from that. Even if you're just telling your story, there's a lesson to be learned there. So that totally makes sense.
So maestro
What
of
are
moolah,
Yeah,
I may have to patent that or something.
I think you should. Yeah, that's yours to keep. So,
Okay, thanks. I
um,
appreciate it.
so couple of last questions, then we'll turn it over to the live chat and see what they want to ask you. But what is the last stock that you added to your portfolio, the most recent addition, and what is the last one, the most recent one that you sold out of, and why did you buy that one, and why did you sell the one you sold?
Yeah, so I'll take the buy first because it's a quicker answer, and then I have to explain the sell because it's
Okay.
not. I didn't sell it because I dislike the company. So the buy, I bought two stocks on Friday, or two. I had two transactions on Friday. One was Johnson and Johnson, and I put a video out on the Kenvue Johnson and Johnson piece, and I
Really good
think
video,
Johnson
by
and
the way.
Johnson. Oh, great, thanks. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. And I think Johnson Johnson's the best approach right now because you get both Kenvue and Johnson and Johnson, and the reason I think that is because as I think they're getting close to settling this talc lawsuit. I think they're in the realm of possibility now, but yet their stock is still depressed. And so I think
Hmm.
once that happens, once that gets resolved, then the J&J piece of that portfolio is going to go up, and so you're going to get both J&J as
Yeah.
well as Kenvue. So I'm buying Johnson & Johnson. I bought some Friday. And another one that I bought, which is a new position for me, is Raymond James Financial.
I saw
So I
that
bought 50 shares
your
of that.
video. Yeah.
Okay, great. So,
Yeah.
I've been watching that for a while, and I've decided to just go ahead and start a position in Raymond James Financial.
Yeah. It looked
Okay, so
like from what you showed, it looked like a really great company.
I can't find anything wrong with it. I mean, my five pillars, right? The five
Hmm.
pillars are financial, um,
Yep.
cost allocate or capital allocation, valuation, management team, and strategy, right? So I look at their
Real quick,
strategy, I look at their management team.
would you dive into those five pillars just a little bit for those who haven't heard you talk about that?
Yeah, so I'm happy to. So I think of my approach in five pillars. One is financial. So and I take these in this order, and then anytime I find anything that I don't like, a red flag or anything like that, I then move on to another company because I can limit my amount of research that way. I don't have to research the entire company and do everything that I want to do if I find a red flag early on. So I look
Hmm.
at the financials first. Being a financial guy, I look for solid cash flow. I look for growing earnings. I look for growing revenues. I look for great return on invested capital. That's one of the things. I also look for a great interest coverage ratio. So there's several metrics that I look for, and so I look through their financial information. And once I'm good with that, then I look for how they allocate capital. So, as you know, anytime a business is profitable, they have additional capital. And that capital can be used in multiple ways. It can be given as dividends to investors, it can be invested in capital equipment, it can be used to buy back shares. There's a couple others that are escaping me at the moment. But how are they allocating their capital that they have? And if they are giving it all to investors, I'm not really okay with that, right? I want to have it, because what do we call this? The earnings ratio. What is that? I'm drawing a blank all of a sudden. The one we want to be 60% or less, right? The
Free cash flow
payout,
payout
the
ratio.
payout ratio.
Yeah.
Yeah, the earnings payout ratio. We want to be 60% or
Okay.
less. So I look at that and I say, are they paying out? If they're paying out 100% of their earnings, then they're probably not making enough to reinvest in the business and grow the business, right? So I'm looking for
Mm.
something that's a little bit lower than that. So I'm looking at their allocation of capital, and so that's the second thing. The third thing I look at is, and as there's everything in life has a value, and I look for the valuation of the stock. And what does Warren Buffett say, right? Price is what you pay, but
Price
value
is
is
what
what
you
you get.
pay. Mhm.
So, when I look at the value of the company, I want to know that the price I'm paying, I'm comfortable with the valuation. It doesn't have to be discounted for me as long as typically the stock is overvalued, right? So
Mhm.
if a great stock comes into fair value range, like Johnson and Johnson, that's the time for me to pick up some shares because I think they're going to go, up in the future. So I look at the valuation as the third thing. If it's way overvalued, I move on, right? And I may put it on my watch list and keep an eye on it, but I then move on. The fourth thing is I look at the company's strategy, and you can find that in a couple of different places. One is their 10K. They actually have a section in there on strategy, so you can read that and understand what they believe they're going to do to improve the business and to make money and serve the customer and that kind of thing. So you can look at the strategy there. Also, they will have usually a PowerPoint slides or something along those lines with their earnings calls or with conferences that they attend. And I go through those because, a lot of times a picture speaks 1,000 words, and they
Mhm.
will tend to put, instead of just words, they will add pictures to that. And I don't know about you, but I do enjoy picture books. So
Yeah,
it
sometimes
helps
it's
me,
easier
right?
to go through those. Sometimes it's more pleasant to go through those than the annual report or the quarterly
Absolutely.
report. Yeah.
Yeah, so then and for the strategy, for me, if I don't understand the strategy, one of two things is going on. It's either too complicated for me and I just don't understand it, or I've found that there are some companies that really don't know their own strategy. So, I found that both cases, right? And so either way, if I don't understand the strategy or they don't understand the strategy, I'm moving on.
How
Then
can
the
you tell
last
if they
thing.
don't Sorry, how can you tell if they don't understand the strategy?
Because at least from my perspective, when I read the information and I see what they're putting together, I'm trying to think of an example of this, but I probably shouldn't because it might taint some things. But there are times when you look at the strategy and you look at what they're actually doing and they don't match up. Here's a great example. I had bought Allstate, right? Allstate Insurance Company,
Yeah.
and their strategy is to grow their business through independent, maybe not independent, but through person to person contact with through insurance agents, right? But then they turn around and they allocate some of their capital to safe auto insurance, which is totally not that way, right? So they say that their strategy is to go and build relationships with customers and have insurance agents who are touching base with them, having that connection, and they spend their money and they grow. They have a merger with a company that is not about that at all. So I look at that and I say they either are not telling us their full strategy, or they saw this shiny object and decided to go after it, but it didn't match their strategy. And at that
Mm.
point, I decided that I would sell my Allstate shares
Okay.
because I didn't
So
feel
either
that they
way,
were.
they
Go ahead.
weren't putting their money where their mouth is.
Exactly. It didn't match up,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
And then the fifth thing that I look at is the management team. And I look for whether I believe they have the capability to carry out that strategy. So if I have good financials, good capital allocation, the valuation is good, and their strategy is good, the only thing left is, can they fulfill it? Can they make that happen in the future? Because I'm not buying the past. The past has already happened. I'm buying the
Mm.
future. And so I want them to be able to deliver on everything that they have currently, and grow in the future. So I'm looking for whether the management team has the capability to do that. Now, this is highly subjective, right? I mean, it's not like
Yeah,
you can look at
that's a
that and
tough one.
yeah. And so one of the ways I do that is I look at their acquisitions, and I look
Okay.
for whether those acquisitions make sense with their strategy. I look at if they have an incident in their past that like a crisis of some point, or of some kind. Then how did they handle that crisis, right? If they handled that crisis well and they communicated well and they understood what was happening and why it happened and how they're going to fix it, and they put a plan together and they carry out that plan, that's the kind of management team that I like to see, right? Because many times what happens to you doesn't define you. How you handle it defines you. And so I'm looking for a management team that, maybe they've had some issues, but then I want to see how they handled that, because that will tell me more about the management team than really anything else. So those are my five
Okay.
pillars.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That's super helpful to know that. So, what was the most recent stock you sold out of?
Yeah, so I sold, and drum roll, I sold Verizon this week.
Okay.
I had sold AT&T a couple of weeks ago, but let me describe why I sold Verizon. I didn't sell
Yeah.
Verizon because I don't believe that they're gonna, I didn't sell them because I don't like them. I sold them because I am refurbishing a house, we moved to a farm, right? And I also bought a house just down the street. We are refurbishing
Mm.
that house, and then with interest rates up like they are, I felt that it was better for me to draw funds from my after tax account, use that to
Oh.
invest in this house, than it was
Okay.
to go get a mortgage to fix this house up. So I am
Yeah.
selling off a few shares to invest in more real estate, and then we're also selling a property. So the idea is that once that sale closes, then those funds will come back to me. I will put those back into my after tax account and move forward. So it's just a kind of a transition time for me. And so I don't want you to go out and sell Verizon because I sold Verizon, and I wouldn't want you to do that anyway. But I didn't sell it because I didn't like it. I sold it because it was my least favorite, if that makes any
Yeah.
sense, of the portfolio.
Now, when you get those funds back, do you think you would put that back in Verizon, or do you have other plans for it in your portfolio?
Yeah, I will. Of course, it'll depend, right? It'll depend on what the market
Right.
has done, what the valuation is, what the stock prices are doing, and if anything pops up, right? Sometimes
Yeah.
things happen, so it'll depend. But I do plan to own some Verizon moving forward. It is, I talked about earlier this blend of high yield versus high growth, and it is part of my high yield strategy. So I'll buy some more shares when it comes back, when the money comes back.
Okay. So
Yeah.
the last question I have for you is on another high yielder, an
Yeah,
increasingly higher yielder. How have you been feeling about KRC? Because I know you have it in your portfolio as well.
I do. And I think KRC, so we've got a lot of uncertainty in the real estate market, especially the commercial real estate um, industry. And so I think, Warren Buffett, which I obviously, admire and respect a lot. One of the things he says is when there's fear, when other people are afraid, you buy. And I would kind of adjust that a bit. I would say when other people are afraid, wisely buy. Right? Don't buy just
Yeah.
because people are selling off their shares. Understand what's going on. I think KRC is going to do fine in the long run. And so, and again, this is in my Roth account, right? Because it is a REIT, and I get some tax benefits there by having it in there. But I think it's a long term investment for me. It is down, and I think it's down because of a short term focus by investors, and I'm buying it for the long run. So I
Yeah.
don't have a ton of it. It's not a big part of my portfolio. I think it's, I don't know, 0.3% or 0.4% of my
Oh, okay.
portfolio. So it doesn't move my portfolio value one way or the other. But I
Yeah.
think it's going to be fun to watch it over the long term. So yeah, I'm
Yeah. It's
I'm, I'm
been.
in.
Yeah. Well, that's good to hear. I've been kind of buying it on the way down, and it seems to me that it just. And I don't know. Maybe something else will happen as time goes on, but it still looks to me they're fundamentally firing on all cylinders, and so that's kind of why I've been buying a bit more as the share price has gone down, and it seems that it's just kind of more sentiment in the commercial real estate space, which is understandable. I can understand why people wouldn't want to get involved with it with the whole work from home thing. But I don't know,
Yeah, and
even in the
there's
face of all that, it still seems to be doing pretty well.
yeah, it is, and there's a little bit of uncertainty, right, as well, because their founder and CEO has announced his
Yeah.
retirement, and so we don't know who the next person is going to be, what their capabilities are going to be. So as we kind of wait that, we're going to have the ability, I think, to pick up some shares at some pretty cheap prices. So yeah,
Yeah.
I won't it won't ever be a huge part of my portfolio, but it is a stock that I am going to add to that position while it's low.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Thank you. Thank you for hanging in there with me because I've kind of felt like a lone ranger with with KRC. But
Yeah, we'll
anyway,
go
let's.
down
We got
together.
about. Yeah, yeah. Hopefully not. Um, so we've got about 15 minutes left in the stream. I think we should turn it over to the live chat and see what they have to say. What other questions they might have for you. I see one here from Fast Eddie here who says, Kevin, what year did you retire? How big was your nest egg? Kind of ballpark. I mean, you can see the question there on the screen.
Yeah, boy, there's a lot packed in that. The year I retired was 2021, so a year after COVID, and so I've been retired for 2 years now. And how big was my nest egg? I would say if the nest egg is everything, it's with real estate as well as stock portfolio. Of course, my stock portfolio is transparent. I mean, you can see that it's around 1.2 million, but the real estate portfolio is probably about almost 3 million. So I've got about $3 million worth of property and about 1.3 million in stocks.
Wow.
So it's about $4 million. So
Wow, I didn't realize you had that much real estate. That's awesome.
yeah, it's pretty cool. So that was the ballpark withdrawal strategy. So I think this is really key, and I'm glad Fast Eddie asked this question and it's something you touched on earlier, Ryan, is that I don't have a withdrawal schedule. I'm not
Yeah.
withdrawing from my portfolio, and the reason I don't is because I don't think retirement is about trying to outlive or not outlive my money, right? So I don't have a withdrawal schedule. I have a dividend schedule. And so whatever I'm able to spend, that's where my budget is. And so, retirement's not about spending everything I have. Retirement is about living off of a stream of income with hopefully growing over time, right? So,
Yeah.
some people will say, oh, 4%, if you live off 4%, you'll be fine. But to me, that strategy says I want to hopefully not outlive my money. And I think that's just not a great strategy. I would rather say, here's my dividend portfolio. These are the dividends that are coming out, and that's what I can live. That's where I set my budget, and I get,
Yeah.
if I have enough money, then I do what I want. If I don't, I do with less, right? So
Yeah.
that's the way I do it.
Especially for us younger guys talking about outliving your money. I mean, I'm almost 30, and just at the rate modern medicine is advancing, and the more we know about health and wellness and all that jazz, I know I just really wonder what life expectancy is going to look like 30, 40 years down the road, and how, I don't know, how much that can expand. But assuming that we'll be living longer and longer and longer, that even kind of necessitates this style of investing even more, where you don't have some sort of withdrawal strategy, because we don't know how long we're going to be living. It could be a long, hopefully it could be a long time. So it'd be nice
Right.
to have just one less thing to worry about.
Yeah.
No.
So
But anyway,
and I
moving on
don't.
to the next. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to
Sorry.
say I don't know what a three bucket strategy is. So maybe Fast Eddie can shoot me a note or something about what that is. I'll certainly look into
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, Fast Eddie, if you want, follow up with us on that in the live chat. We'll circle back to it. But Citizen of the Year wants to know, can you ask Kevin if he thinks CIA exam is worth it? What is that?
Now, yeah, remind me of CIA. I
Certified
don't know what
something analyst, maybe?
investment analyst.
Maybe.
So obviously, if I don't know what it
COS.
is,
Someone said CPA exam. Oh, here we go. Internal audit. Is there an
oh
exam
yeah, yeah,
called
yeah.
Certified Internal Auditor?
Yeah. I don't know why I didn't think of that. I guess I've been retired for 2 years. Yeah, certified internal audit, absolutely worth it. I don't have that. I came into that role later in my career, and but I did. This is sad, but I did require it of all of my auditors. So, I required them to have something that I wasn't willing to go get. But it's a great way to build your skills in internal audit, internal controls, and those kind of things. So yeah, absolutely, CIA is worthwhile. If that's something that you have a propensity for, I would say absolutely go get it.
Nice.
Yeah.
So we got to give a quick shout out to our friend Mr. Income from the Discord group who made an appearance with us tonight. Man, we really do have an awesome community in there. It's been really fun having that. I haven't jumped into engage too often lately, but I pop in and read, and it's really cool to see everyone talking, and it's really cool to see the community we have in there. Just a bunch of great people.
Yeah, I agree, and that's one of the things that I love about the dividend growth community is that we are a community. We are about helping each other understand how to invest and what stocks are doing, and so and that your Discord is phenomenal. It is the only
Thank you.
Discord that I go to. So
Oh,
I don't go in. I go in every day and read, kind of like you do, but I don't always
yeah.
interact. But it is a great group of people, and if you're not in that, you need to get in it. I want to see you there.
I think that, yeah, exactly. And there's a link in the description if you guys want to join. But I think a lot of us younger guys would be lost without the knowledge shared by you and Mr. Income and some of the other guys in there. So it's
Yeah,
just like you
Zal
doing
does a
your
lot
channel, it
too.
makes a difference. Zal does a
Well,
lot. Jacob Morris
Zal
does a
does a
lot.
lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
he
And
would
then
be
we can't
disappointed
leave
if we
out
didn't
Turtle.
mention him. Oh yeah,
And we
Turtle
can't leave
too.
out
Yeah,
Turtle. We'd all be, we'd be a wreck without him. But anyway, moving on.
absolutely.
Pat wants to know, what is your largest holding?
Yeah, so my largest holding is Lockheed Martin. And Lockheed Martin rose to fame in my portfolio, not because I bought a lot of it, but because I bought it at the right time. And it has gone up. I don't remember exactly how much I've gained on that, probably around 50 or 60%. So it has grown in my portfolio just organically. It's not because I've been buying a lot of shares of it. So yeah, Lockheed Martin's number two, and Cummins CMI is Lockheed Martin's number one. Cummins CMI is number two in my portfolio.
And you just made a video about Cummins. Is that another one that you've been adding more to?
It is one that I'm looking to add more to. I think they're discounted right now. I'm gonna be a little bit patient because since they're the number two stock in my portfolio, I want it to come down a little bit more to get closer to my cost basis. But if I were starting a position in Cummins, I think I would start right now. That's, I mean, it may go down from here. Who knows, right? But I would start a position here if I were doing it all over again. But that's just me. I like their future thinking, right? I like what they're doing from an environmental perspective, and there's just a lot to like about the company.
Do you have a rule of thumb that you follow when it comes to sizing your positions? Is there a certain point that you won't add past, whether it's, a lot of people use 10% as the rule of thumb? They don't want any one position being 10% of their portfolio. Do you follow anything like that?
Yeah, I do. I look for my positions to be about 5% of my portfolio if I feel strongly about them. If I feel really strongly about them, I will let them go to 10%, but I typically won't go more than 10%. And I know that there's some people who, believe that if you really feel strongly about it, why don't you just have, your money all in one stock, right? And there is some value to diversification because there are things that I just don't know. I mean, the fraud
Yeah.
could happen, right? And if there's fraud that happens in the company, the share price drops dramatically, and that's not anything I could know. But it's certainly going to impact me. So I like to spread that risk around, that the performance risk of the company around a bit, and have now right now I have 45 positions. That's way too many, and you get there over time, right? Because you go, wow, like
Yeah.
Raymond James, right? I bought 50 shares of that. Well, if Raymond James shoots back up in price, I'm probably not going to buy anymore. So I'm sitting there with 50 shares, and then it stays there forever. So I want to do some house cleaning, I think, over the next month or so.
I would think, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I would think too, as your portfolio grows larger in size, you'd want to protect it a bit more. All those income streams, especially as you go to live off that income, you'd want to protect it a little bit more with a wider variety of holdings.
Exactly. Yeah. I like being diversified, and there's been some what scuttlebutt, I guess that would be a military term, about not people not liking diversification. I tend to not buy into that. I really like a diversified portfolio. So that's just me, though.
Yeah, I think a lot of that just comes from people like Warren and Charlie who kind of knock diversification. But I mean, speaking personally for someone who doesn't have it all figured out and is still learning a lot, it feels good to, I don't know, just more diversification, I guess, for me is a hedge against my own potential misjudgments.
Yeah, and let me say something about that, because I think what Warren and Charlie are saying is you really shouldn't, just throw money out there, to invest in just a bunch of different companies. You should really understand and have confidence in your companies. But when you take what they're saying and you compare that with their portfolio, it doesn't match
Yeah.
up. I mean, they've got a pretty diversified portfolio. So, I think we have to try to interpret them. I think we have to look at their portfolio as well and try to get a real beat on what they're trying to tell us.
Yeah, that's a good point. That was a good addition. So a couple more comments and we'll wrap it up. But my mom says hi. Hi to both of
Oh,
us.
hi, Mom.
She's been
Glad you could
watching the
join
live
us.
streams. Yeah, she's been tuning in and learning about her dividend stock investing, which is really cool.
That's awesome. That is really cool.
So next question. Currently, I have two portfolios, one in a 401k and another in a Roth. For asset allocation purposes, would it not be wise to consider these as one portfolio? If not, why?
Yeah, that's now I I separate mine out just so that I can make sure that I have the right balance that I'm looking for. But I do consider it all one portfolio. So I would say yes, absolutely. I mean, your portfolio is one portfolio, but it's really in two
Yeah,
different places. So
right.
if you're putting money in a Roth, then you're limited to, I think it's what, $6,000 or something like that. And so once you hit that, then and you still have money going in your 401k, they're going to get out of balance. But I think you look at it as one portfolio and make decisions on what you're going to invest in and where, based on some other criteria, but not have two separate portfolios. Yeah, I would agree with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's like you can have technically two portfolios, but you can consider it in parts of a whole, I guess.
Exactly.
Okay, Fast Eddie, this is probably our last question. Kevin, your real estate is broken up into what? Rentals, commercial, your farm, which your farm's in Alabama, right? That's where you have it?
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is your real estate bringing in monthly income?
So yeah, my real estate brings in monthly income. Some of it I'm selling off, right? And so that's going to be helpful. But most of the income from my real estate is rentals, and it's vacation rentals. And so it is a bit seasonal, because in the summertime, not only does the rent frequency improve, but also the rates at which they rent improve. So it's a bit of a summer waiting. But yeah, most of the real estate that I have would be my rentals, vacation rentals, and the second, I guess, would be the farm. So that would be the order that I would put it in, and then the third
As
would be
far as
this
the
property
rental
we're just selling
goes,
off.
no. As
Mhm.
far as the rental goes, because it does fluctuate seasonally, how do you gauge how much of that income to take versus, I guess, just keep in the bank?
Yeah, and it goes back to my budget, right? And so
Okay.
I'm not sitting there just spending and then trying to chase my spending with my income. I am keeping my spending in control through a budget, and therefore I understand what I need from my rent, from my rentals, and from my dividends, and from my pension sources to make that budget happen. And I do that ahead of time so that I'm not surprised. Now,
Yeah.
things come up, but I also have a plan for handling surprises as well.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a pretty good place to wrap it up. But Kevin, my friend, I'm really glad we made this happen. It was really fun being able to chat with you. We'll definitely do it again sometime. I think it would be fun if you, myself, and Russ hopped on and did some sort of three way. I think we'd have a lot of good chat going. So we should set that up for some time in the near future.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna ask you guys because I've been threatening to go live, right? And I bought some new equipment for
Yes.
that. And Russ actually helped me about a week or so ago get the final piece in place, and now I am ready. So when I get back to Alabama, I'm gonna talk to you and Russ, and I think we're gonna get the three of us on a live stream that'll be from my
Yeah.
my channel. So that'll be really cool.
Cool.
Be
I'd love,
groundbreaking.
yeah, I'd love to do that. I'm
Awesome.
anytime. That'd be so much fun. So, guys, before we sign off, I've linked Kevin's channel. It's the first line in the description. So I hope you check him out. Please do. You're going to learn so much. And Kevin, once again, thank you so much, man. And just so you guys know too, we are jumping right over to the after party a few minutes after this stream ends. So I hope to see all you guys over there. There's also a link to join that in the description as well. But Kevin, once again, thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, Ryan. And again, thanks for what you're doing in the community, because I don't underestimate the impact you're having, not only with me, but also all the people who are following you. You are a beacon of light for us, and we really appreciate what you're doing with your
Nah.
social media and your channel. So well done.
Thank you. That really keeps me going. So thank you sincerely.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, you guys all have a good night. Have a fantastic weekend. Please stay out of trouble. Okay, Shamir, I can't keep bailing you out. Okay, it's really cutting into my investing budget. But you guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.